My husband Thomas abandoned me at a foreign airport. No money, no ID, no hope. He wanted to get rid of me for good, so he could take the house. But when he unlocked the front door and stepped inside, I was already there, smiling. "Oh, you're home. I have a little gift for you." And that gift destroyed his entire life. Before I continue, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments, what time is it where you are? I had just walked out of the restroom and saw them, Thomas and Susan, his best friend. They were leaning in close, whispering urgently in a tone that didn't belong between friends. The moment I stepped closer, they both jerked upright, startled like they'd been caught red-handed. They sprang apart, forced awkward smiles. "Everything okay?" I sat down at gate 17, acting like I hadn't seen a thing. "You two have been so quiet this morning." Thomas didn't look up from his phone. "Just tired." Susan's grin was so bright it felt fake. "I just want to go home. Can't wait to sleep in our bed again. Our flight to Portland wouldn't depart for another 90 minutes. A week in Puerto Vallarta was supposed to be the reset we needed. Blue ocean, wine, evenings that pretended to be peaceful. I thought it was a chance to reconnect. But then my best friend showed up uninvited, and everything shifted. The air turned thick, heavy. Thomas kept scrolling on his phone like it was all an act. Susan sat beside him, folding and unfolding her plane ticket until its edges wore thin. Neither of them looked at me. 20 minutes passed. Then Thomas stood up. "Babe, can you grab me some water and snacks?" "You know what I like," I stood. "Let's go together." He shook his head. "No, you go." "I have to make a work call." He pressed a $20 bill into my hand. His fingers were cold, despite the stifling heat in the terminal. "Here, that's enough." The urgency in his voice made me pause. It wasn't the tone of a man asking for a quick errand. He stepped back, avoiding my eyes, glancing toward the entrance. I looked over at Susan. She was glued to her phone. Then she looked up. "I'm going to the bathroom." "All right," I said, holding the bill, feeling the thin paper between my fingers. "I'll be right back." The store was between the currency exchange and the coffee stand. I took my time. Thomas liked expensive imported water. I grabbed 3 bottles. A trail mix pack for Susan, the kind with dried cranberries she liked. A protein bar for me. The checkout line was long. 2 crying kids made everything slower. 12 minutes passed, maybe more. I returned to gate 17 with the plastic bag in hand. The seats were empty. No jackets, no backpacks, no sign anyone had been sitting in rows 14, 15, or 16. Other people were there now, scrolling their phones, reading magazines, unbothered. My bag slipped from my hand. I dropped my backpack, hands shaking as I unzipped it. Coat? Still there? Toiletry kit? Still there. Inside pocket, where my passport always was, empty. Side pocket, no phone. Front pouch, no wallet. I checked again, twice, 3 times, hoping I missed something. Nothing. Everything was gone. I ran to the gate agent. "The people in seats 14 and 15, where did they go?" She typed quickly, eyes scanning the screen. "They boarded an earlier flight to Denver. Took off about 20 minutes ago." "Denver?" My voice rose. "We're flying to Portland." "That man, he's my husband." She checked again, her tone softening. "They had connecting tickets through Denver, ma'am." The floor tilted beneath me. Denver, not Portland, not home. Did they leave anything? A message? Anything at all? No. I'm sorry. I walked back to the empty seats and dropped into one, reached into my pocket and pulled out a single dollar bill. That was all the money I had in the world. $20. He gave me 20 and took everything else. The plastic bag sat beside me. 3 bottles of water, including the overpriced one he liked, trail mix, protein bar. I'd spent $19 just to be considerate. $1 left. I stood, legs shaky, and made my way to the airport security office. The officer looked at me with a kind but tired gaze. My husband took my passport, wallet, and phone. "He left me here. Do you have any other ID?" No. Just $1 and this bag of water. She wrote up a report, gave me a case number, and told me how to get to the U.S. consulate in the city. Her sympathy was real, but it couldn't undo the truth. I left her office holding a stack of papers that meant nothing without ID. In front of me, the airport buzzed. Everyone had phones, passports, wallets, and clear plans for their lives. My empty backpack dragged one shoulder down, the plastic bag dangling from the other. Behind me, the engines roared as a plane soared into the blue sky, maybe the one carrying my husband. I watched it climb until it vanished, and felt something cold and heavy settle into my chest, right where trust used to be. The loudspeaker, the wheels clacking, other people's laughter, all blurred out. Only silence remained, and one question echoed in my head. Why? I took a deep breath, then another. The shock began to fade, like fog lifting to reveal the ground beneath. Trapped? Yes. Helpless? No. The woman who once ran a business, the part of me that had been asleep for years since I became a housewife, suddenly woke up. 1. Documents. 2. Money. 3. Get home. I listed them in my head, neat and orderly, the same way I used to before every board meeting. The information desk directed me to the U.S. consulate. I walked nearly 20 minutes through streets crowded with tourists haggling for souvenirs, while vendors pushed carts of fruit. The office was small, tidy, with a flag on the wall and a photo of the president behind the desk. A middle-aged woman looked up as I stepped inside. "Start from the beginning, Mrs. Evans." I sat down across from her and replied quietly, "My name is Ashley Evans." I told her everything: the vacation, the sudden appearance of my so-called best friend, the airport, the empty seats, the ransacked backpack. My husband left me, taking my passport, phone, wallet, everything. The staff member, whose name tag read Maria Henderson, paused her writing and looked at me. "Your husband? He hasn't contributed financially to our household for 2 years. I guess now he wants to keep everything." Maria's expression shifted, less formal, softer, touched with sympathy. "We can issue an emergency passport. Normally it takes at least 3 business days, but you'll need a police report and a $145 fee." I emptied my pockets onto the desk. A few Mexican coins, a breakfast receipt from 3 days ago, and the last $1 bill Thomas had handed me when he told me to buy snacks, as if it were some cruel joke. Maria stood and went to the back. 10 minutes later, she returned, holding a stack of papers and a new message. "You can owe the fee until you're back home. We have an emergency fund that can help cover your basic needs for now. You can repay it later when you're ready." I looked at her, startled by kindness arriving at the exact moment I thought I had lost all faith. She smiled. "Don't worry. You're just angry right now. And angry women, they always find their way home." I left the consulate and sat on a bench outside, still holding the papers that smelled of fresh ink. A familiar voice called out. I looked up. It was Maria, the woman who had just encouraged me. She walked over gently and asked, "Do you have anyone you can call?" "My husband used to be the only one. Maybe a neighbor, but I can't reach them." Maria nodded slowly. "Sometimes the ones closest to us are the first to walk away." She told me a story about her mother. "My mom was betrayed once. Different story, same feeling. She lost everything except me, a burden by her side. But she survived and started again." I looked at her, said nothing, just nodded. Maria held out her hand. "Come on, I know a place." She drove an old car and took me to a small hostel, $15 a night. Clean, safe, quiet. When I tried to press some cash into her hand for gas, she shook her head. "My mother was once helped by a stranger too. I'm just paying a bit of it forward." I stood there, watching her car disappear into the distance, and for the first time since that morning, I felt something ease inside me. Not because I was safe, but because I was still strong enough to start again. The hostel room had 6 bunk beds, faintly smelling of sea salt and laundry detergent. I chose the lower bunk, tucked into the corner. Two young travelers from Belgium and a factory worker from Guadalajara shared dinner with me: bread, cheese, and a few apples. The Belgian girl even lent me her phone. I dialed home. The phone rang and rang. No answer. An hour later, I called again. Still silence. Where was Thomas? The next day, I went to the police station downtown. The officer took my statement through an interpreter. Passport taken. Phone taken. Wallet missing. All stolen by my husband and my best friend. The interpreter paused. I could tell she was picturing it, a scene full of betrayal and drama. Then she looked up at me, as if to confirm. Your husband and your best friend? He lives in my house. And she suddenly showed up on our couple's vacation. And you believe this was planned? The Denver tickets instead of Portland, the changed connection time, the upgraded seats. None of it was coincidence. They typed slowly, printed the report, stamped it, and handed it to me. With that familiar, pitying look people give to a woman betrayed by the two people she trusted most, as if I had lost everything. That night, I lay in the damp room, listening to the ceiling fan creak steadily above. A memory came rushing back. Just last month, Thomas had suddenly become caring, attentive. He'd said, "We should update your medical directive, just in case. You only need to sign here." The document appeared on his laptop. I'd signed it on his tablet without asking questions. No printout, no doubts. Now, thinking back, the realization hit me like cold water to the face. What I signed wasn't a medical directive. I sat up so fast, the girl beside me flinched. "I'm sorry," I whispered, though my mind was racing. What had I signed? A power of attorney? A property transfer? An insurance authorization? Each possibility worse than the last. On the third day, I left the hostel and walked the city, not like a tourist, but like someone calculating. What was Thomas's goal? The house, or my life? What was his plan? He thought I was stuck here. His timeline? At least a week. Or maybe something even darker waited ahead. My advantage? Surprise. At noon, Maria called. My emergency passport was ready. Thin, temporary, but valid. She handed me an envelope too, $600 from the emergency fund. "Repay it when you can," she said. I went to a small internet cafe near the bus terminal, paid $1 for 30 minutes. A direct flight to Portland. $420. I booked it immediately for the next morning. Thomas had rerouted through Denver, thinking I'd be stranded for a week. I would arrive at least 3 days before him. Back at the hostel, I opened my notebook and wrote a new list. Record everything I needed to do. Change the locks, retrieve the document I'd signed, find a lawyer, and most importantly, make Thomas face what he'd done. Not for revenge, but for justice. The Belgian girl looked over from her bed. She had overheard parts of my story. Gently, she tried to comfort me, asking, "Your husband didn't answer. Maybe he's just busy. Maybe your friend and he didn't travel together. Try to stay calm," I gave a small smile. "I hope you're right." But I knew the truth wasn't that kind. He thought I was trapped in Mexico. He was wrong. The next morning, I boarded a direct flight back to Portland. Middle seat, flanked by a tired-looking woman on one side and a young guy with headphones on the other. My emergency passport was tucked into my jacket pocket and $165 hidden in my sock. As the plane rolled down the runway, I gently closed my eyes. Through the tiny window, Puerto Vallarta receded into the distance. The beaches, the hotel, the airport where everything collapsed. The wheels left the ground. I didn't look back. In my mind, Portland appeared vividly. The pale green craftsman house, the porch I once repaired with my own hands, and Thomas's stunned face when he opens the door to find me standing there. When the plane landed, the hard thud of the wheels hitting the tarmac felt like a reminder that I was home. But this time, home wasn't a place of refuge. It was a battlefield. Portland was overcast, light rain falling, tall pine trees standing still as if unaware of betrayal. I let everyone else grab their luggage first, patient, as if I had all the time in the world. Thomas had no idea I was on my way back. My ride arrived within minutes, a rideshare car driven by a young man around 25, with a Seahawks air freshener hanging from the mirror. He made a few attempts at small talk before going quiet, sensing I wasn't in the mood. 47 minutes later, we pulled up in front of my house. I sat in the car for a few seconds, staring at it through the fogged-up window. Pale green with white trim, the porch I had sweat over repainting one summer, the little garden still waiting patiently to be planted. $850,000, years of work, youth, and all the moments I once mistook for happiness. And now he was living there for free, planning to take it all. I handed over $47, added a $3 tip, a small courtesy for a long day. Then I stood in front of the gate, backpack light on my shoulders, staring at my own house like it was a stranger. "Ashley?" A familiar voice cut through. I turned. Daniel Kowalski, my next-door neighbor, stepped off his porch, curly hair, glasses masking his kind eyes. "Back already? Where's Thomas? Is everything okay?" Daniel used to work an office job, but was now on leave after a long stretch of service. I realized instantly, an observant neighbor could be a powerful ally. I gave a soft smile. "They're on another flight. I got delayed." He frowned. "Odd, for a family vacation." I met his eyes. "Did you see anything when they packed the car?" Daniel nodded, speaking slowly. 3 days ago, early morning, I saw them loading boxes, suitcases, more than you'd bring for a trip." I waved, but Thomas didn't wave back. He looked tense, almost nervous. "Do you remember what time?" "About 6:30, maybe earlier, before the rest of the neighborhood was up. But," he hesitated, then continued, "there was a woman with them." I assumed it was you. I nodded, grateful. "If Thomas comes back, and I'm not here, don't tell him you saw me." Daniel looked at me, understanding immediately. "Of course." "As far as I'm concerned, you're still on vacation," I smiled, sensing a quiet alliance forming between us. I crouched down, reached beneath the small flower bush by the porch, and picked up the fake rock where I'd hidden the spare key since buying the house. My fingers remembered the motion without effort. The door opened easily. The alarm code hadn't changed, which meant Thomas never thought I'd return. I stood in the middle of the living room, the fading light of evening spilling through the curtains. The familiar ticking of the clock was gone. Only damp air, dust, and a heavy emptiness remained. I looked around the house that once was mine, now just a hollow shell, stripped of every familiar trace. "He thought I'd be stuck," I murmured, eyes scanning the empty room. "He thought I'd be gone long enough for him to legitimize every asset that belonged to me." My reflection hovered faintly in the darkened glass, blurred but still standing. He was wrong. I walked into the study, sat down at the desk, and spread the documents out before me. Raised seals, signatures, bold fonts. Each line felt like mockery. "For love and affection." I let out a dry laugh. What love? What affection? When someone is willing to erase you from your own home with a single click. I opened the laptop, logged into the bank. The balance was intact. He hadn't gotten to it yet. I began jotting down everything I needed to do. Call the lawyer, file a theft report, change the locks, review the homeowner's insurance. Each line was a clean cut through the old illusion that marriage equaled trust. Outside the window, Daniel was still in his yard, pretending to trim the bushes, but really keeping watch. I was grateful in a way that didn't need words. In this world, an honest witness was worth more than all the promises. I stepped out onto the porch and inhaled the cold air. "I'm okay," I said when he glanced over. "You're not," he replied, "but you will be." I just nodded. No rebuttal needed. I went back to the study and opened the small drawer where I used to keep my planning notebooks from my company days. The old habits kicked in like muscle memory. Write, number, bullet, strategize. Don't react with emotion. I wrote. Respond with facts. The anger was no longer burning. It was cold, precise, and organized. I sorted the documents, slid the contract into its own folder, labeled it Evidence. Outside, the wind rustled through the garden. I saw the flowers we planted together after our wedding still blooming, purple blossoms hanging along the fence. A strange ache filled me, mingled with relief. There are things people can take, clocks, rings, even houses, but they can't erase the memory of the person who built it all. I gently closed the window, laid my hand on the desk. Tomorrow, I would begin again, not to reclaim a love that had long died, but to reclaim my name, on this land and in this life. The next morning, sunlight slanted through the kitchen window, cutting streaks across the wooden table where I sat with a cup of instant coffee in a chipped ceramic mug. Last night's to-do list was still laid out in front of me, some lines crossed off, new ones added, and key items circled twice. At the top, lawyer. Last night, I borrowed Daniel's laptop and searched 3 law firms in the city that specialized in property disputes. The name Margaret Chen appeared most frequently in successful verdicts. At exactly 8 a.m., I called. The receptionist answered with a professional tone. She has availability next week, I replied. My husband tricked me into signing away our house. I have the documents. I need to see someone today. There was a pause. Then a different voice came on, calm and steady. This is Margaret Chen. Tell me what happened. I summarized the key details. Just the facts. She asked, was the document notarized? Yes. Was your signature real? Yes. Did you understand what you were signing at the time? No. Then bring everything to my office by 11. Include your ID. I prepared like I was going into a critical board meeting. The deed, emergency passport, bank statements, pay stubs, photos of stolen items, a handwritten witness note from Daniel, who saw Thomas moving out with boxes, and a short video from Daniel's door camera. Everything was placed in chronological order, inside a yellow file folder. I dressed properly, pressed blouse, slacks, jacket, the version of myself I used to be. Appearances matter. People believe the image before they believe the words. Margaret's office was on the 20th floor, overlooking the city park. She was petite, around 53, with black and gray hair pulled back neatly, every gesture precise. Her office smelled of fresh paper and ink, 2 walls lined with law books. She motioned for me to sit, and I laid the file on the table, like evidence in court. She put on glasses and read each page. Her face didn't change, but her pen moved faster and faster. 5 minutes later, she looked up. On paper, this is a valid gift deed, notarized, language is clean, signature matches, which means as of the date you signed, the house legally belonged to Thomas. I clenched my hands, steadying my voice. However, she continued, if we can prove you were deceived about the nature of the document, we can file a fraud claim. She turned her screen to face me. The deed, enlarged. What did he say when you signed it? That it was an update to my medical directive. Just in case of emergencies. Did you read it? No? He scrolled quickly, said it was all standard. We're married. I trusted him. And you weren't given a copy? No. I thought he saved it for safekeeping. Good, she scribbled quickly. That's our angle, concealment of material facts. She signaled to her assistant to photocopy, scan, and highlight the notary seal. He planned this. He's meticulous. I'll find the notary and question them. She looked at me. Do you have the retainer? This will be expensive. $5,000 deposit. If it goes to full trial, $20,000 to $40,000, depending on how hard he fights. I answered without pause. I left my job 2 years ago to focus on saving my marriage, but the company I founded after still runs. I can afford this, and it's worth every cent. Chances of winning? I asked. She looked me dead in the eye. If we prove deceit during signing, 60-40 in your favor. With the airport abandonment, the odds rise. But fraud is difficult to prove. I'm not leaving that house. I know. I cleared my schedule for clients like you. That afternoon, I went to the police station. Pale fluorescent lights. Old metal chairs. I filed a report: theft in Mexico, passport, wallet, phone, watch, camera, sterling silver set, all with serial numbers. A young officer, maybe 28, typed slowly. Suspect is your husband? Yes. Does he live with you? In the house I own. The house he's trying to take? He paused, then added, That's civil. But theft is criminal. I'll file the report 90 minutes later. I had a case number. Back at Margaret's office, I found her printing the file, with an urgent motion. Thomas will be served within days. He'll know you're back, and that you're fighting. Good. I want him to know, at 5, Frank the locksmith arrived. A solid man in his 50s, toolbox in hand, voice calm. This lock's decent, but old. I want better security. He replaced the locks on the front door, back door, and garage. Tamper-resistant keys. $340, worth every dollar. I tested each lock twice. Smooth. Secure my house. My keys. When Frank left, I walked through the house, shutting every window, turning every knob, like stitching shut old wounds. I hid a spare key in a new spot, kept one in my bag, another on my desk. I even moved a few things: table, chair, the sofa, just enough so the house would feel my presence again. Outside, Portland was fading into night. I stood at the window, watching neighbors turn on their lights, their lives untouched. Mine, bracing for confrontation. The new phone sat silent on the desk. No missed calls. Thomas still thought I was stuck in Mexico. He was wrong. He was probably enjoying dinner with my so-called friend, believing this house now belonged to them. I took a sip of cold coffee, staring out at the quiet street, a strange calm settling over me. When he comes back, everything will be different. I barely had time to exhale when the phone buzzed again. A call from Margaret Chen's office. I thought she was following up about the confrontation, but the voice on the line belonged to her legal assistant. Mrs. Evans, we've just received notice from opposing counsel. Thomas Evans has retained an attorney, Robert Michaels, a specialist in property disputes. He's filed a counterclaim asserting the legality of the deed of gift and is requesting temporary possession of the house until the court reaches a verdict. I sank into my chair, a chill spreading from my spine to the back of my neck. The real battle had begun. I sat still for a few minutes, letting the last waves of adrenaline dissolve. The house was silent, like it had just weathered a storm. Outside on the porch, the Portland sun dropped lower, casting pale gold light onto the freshly cleaned windows. I reached for my water and took a long sip. In my mind, each piece of the upcoming case lined up like chess pieces. I was no longer the wife left behind at the airport. I was the woman who survived and was now striking back. I called Margaret's office. She answered immediately. I assume you've heard. Yes, I replied, voice low but steady. Good. We'll respond. I need you here tomorrow morning. Bring every receipt and photo you have. I'll file our official reply before they can push the possession request through, and I'll file for a temporary restraining order, blocking access to the property until trial. Thank you. Thank me later. Rest tonight. Tomorrow will be long. I hung up and looked at the stack of files on the table. Documents, invoices, bank records, police reports, all lined up like a timeline, not just of the case, but of everything I had endured. Betrayal, abandonment, theft, and now, resistance. I gathered each paper, clipped them neatly into a hard folder, and set it at the center of the table, sealing off a chapter with quiet finality. Outside, the neighbor's lights had come on. Daniel was still there, his silhouette faint behind the curtain. I texted, "I'm okay. Thank you for keeping an eye out." He sent back a single thumbs-up emoji. No words. But I understood. In a city that suddenly felt unfamiliar, sometimes all you need is one person who sees you, and that's enough. I stood up, locked the front door, then tested every lock one more time. My hands didn't shake. Each click of the deadbolt felt like a confirmation. I was still in control of my life. No more tears, no more trembling, only clarity and resolve. Out there, Thomas might be planning his retaliation, strategizing with his lawyer, believing he still had the upper hand. But me, I was exactly where I needed to be. My house, my name, my life. And this time, I wasn't letting anyone take it away again. 3 days after the confrontation, I sat in Margaret's office for a strategy meeting. She slid a thick stack of documents across the table. Robert Michaels filed an emergency motion for temporary possession, she said, on the grounds that you are unlawfully occupying the home of your husband. The sentence was bitter enough to silence us both. I skimmed the counterclaim, legal jargon packed tight, but the message was crystal clear. Thomas was fighting back, not just defending, but rewriting the entire story. Margaret poured more coffee, glancing at me to ask if I wanted some. I shook my head. Michaels is rewriting the script, she said. You're the unstable wife. He's the victim. He's separating the criminal aspect from the civil one, framing the forged signature and your abandonment in Mexico as a simple marital dispute. He wants the court to think you're just having second thoughts? I gave a dry laugh. That's not it. I know, Margaret said calmly, but courts only believe what you can prove. We need direct evidence that you were deceived when you signed a week later. Worse news arrived. Margaret called. Thomas filed an emergency motion demanding immediate return of the home. He claims he's paying for a hotel, suffering losses because he can't access property he legally owns. I listened, numb. He's putting on a show, Margaret said, but sometimes judges sympathize, especially when the paperwork seems clean. We need to move fast that night, Daniel called over the fence. Ashley, I don't believe it, but social media's blowing up. He showed me his phone. My own face, looking vulnerable, stared back from the screen. The caption read, My wife gifted me this house out of love and trust, then changed her mind, locked me out, and left me homeless in a hotel without warning. Families shouldn't treat each other this way. Below were dozens of comments, some pitying, some mocking, a few old acquaintances confused and asking questions. I asked Daniel, should I respond? Ask your lawyer. Anything you say now could become evidence, I nodded. Silence this time was strategy. 2 weeks later, Margaret scheduled a financial briefing. She laid the estimates across the table. $5,000 retainer, $3,500 already spent, full trial costs projected at $40,000 to $60,000 or more. This is your savings, she said. Thomas is betting you'll give up because you can't keep up. I looked at the numbers, feeling the chill spread through my chest. I could afford it, easily. But was it worth this price, for the love we once shared? What if I settle? Up to you, but settling is rewarding a thief. She was right. I thought of the memories we'd had, but when he left me at the airport, he wasn't thinking of them. 2 more weeks passed. Robert Michaels called. Mrs. Evans, my client wants to settle peacefully. We can negotiate a lease. You pay rent to remain in the house. My house, I said. I'm not renting my own home. The deed has transferred. I'm offering a compromise. There is no compromise between ownership and theft. Then I'll see you in court, he replied coldly. I hung up. Then came the final blow. From Sarah Chen, our private investigator. Your husband is $57,000 deep in credit card debt, she said, flipping open a tablet. The screen glowed red with delinquent accounts. 3 cards have sent demand letters. 1 is preparing a lawsuit. How was he planning to pay? With the house. Sarah showed me emails Thomas sent to 3 realtors back in February. Please assess the market value of the property at. The estimates ranged from $830,000 to $875,000. He had started trying to sell the house before the deed was even signed, before the vacation he paid for. And this, Sarah lowered her voice, is the search history from his IP. Technically gray area, but enough to establish motive. The timestamps showed he had planned this with my so-called best friend 6 weeks before the trip. I stared at the screen, frozen inside. He hadn't acted in a moment of rage. He had planned it, every step, every click, designed to erase me. But he miscalculated one thing. I was still here. 2 days before the preliminary hearing, Margaret and I sat in her conference room, reviewing every piece of new evidence. The debt shows motive. The realtor emails prove premeditation. The search history, it's strong, but its method of retrieval could be challenged, she said, reorganizing the documents in trial order. You'll testify about the signing, what Thomas said, how the document was presented, and the fact that you never received a printed copy. Then we'll hit them with the planning timeline. She drilled me through answers, ran mock cross-examinations. Her paralegal played Michael's. Did you sign? Yes, but... Just answer yes or no. Margaret stepped in. He'll try to trap you in binaries. Judge Morrison allows explanatory testimony. Use that. Don't just defend, clarify. After 2 hours, my responses were sharper, less defensive, more precise. Hearing day, King County Courthouse, Room 15, a late April morning. Presiding, Judge Patricia Morrison, known for being firm and fast. I sat next to Margaret. Across the aisle were Thomas, Susan, and Michael. It was the first time Thomas and I had been face to face since that moment on the porch. He didn't meet my eyes. Margaret opened. Fraudulent conveyance via misrepresentation, exploiting marital trust. Michael's fired back. A valid gift, properly executed, later reimagined as fraud out of regret. Morrison remained stone-faced. Mrs. Evans, please take the stand. I was sworn in. Margaret led with a timeline. I had purchased the house with pre-marriage savings. After marrying, Thomas moved in. The February signing. What did your husband say about the document? He said it was an update to my medical directive. Did you read it closely? He had it open on his laptop while I was preparing for our trip. He scrolled quickly, said it was boilerplate. I trusted him. He was my husband, Michael's cross-examined. But you signed it? Yes. You're educated, have run a business. Yes. So you're capable of reading legal documents? Yes. Yet you claim you didn't understand what you signed? I understood it to be a medical form, as presented. I only realized it was a property transfer when I found the recorded deed afterward. You and your husband had a falling out after the trip, correct? No. That trip was meant to reconnect. He cut me off, pushing falling out. Morrison reminded, answer only the question. I clarified. We didn't argue. He planned to abandon me, at an airport, in a foreign country. With $1 to my name, Margaret submitted our evidence. Credit card debt records, the realtor emails, the pre-trip timeline. Michaels objected. Client finances don't invalidate a legal transfer. Margaret countered. They establish motive. This wasn't a gift. This was desperation. Morrison took notes and said, Court will order an independent evaluation of the signing context, notary procedure, and informed consent. Hearing postponed for 6 weeks. I drove home thinking of Thomas's face. Ashen, stiff, eyes fixed on the defense table. Michaels hadn't let him testify. Daniel called as I pulled into my driveway. How'd it go? The judge wants more investigation. Good. That means she's taking it seriously. But it won't be quick. That same day, Sarah, our PI, called. We found the notary, Frank Morrison. An informal interview got him to talk. Thomas paid him $250 cash to notarize, at a Starbucks. He admitted it felt off but needed the money. Thomas told him, my wife has mobility issues and can't come to the office. 3 days later, we met Frank at his small Ballard office. He was nervous. I shouldn't have done it. Proper procedure requires context, location, verification. Margaret prepared a sworn statement. Starbucks location, $250 cash. The lie about mobility, pressure to rush. Signed under penalty of perjury. You understand this could end your notary career? Frank nodded. I do. But I need to set the record straight. One evening, Daniel knocked. Ashley, your friend asked me to pass this along. If you pay $200,000, they'll sign a quitclaim to return the house. No, I said instantly. The next morning, I told Margaret. She wasn't surprised. They see the case piling up, perjury testimony, financial motive, timeline. This is Thomas's exit strategy. But if we win, you keep the house clean. Paying is ransom. We're not settling. I'm not buying back my own home. Sarah completed her comprehensive report. $2,000, worth every cent. Margaret filed it as supplemental evidence. 3 weeks passed. Papers flew like a war of documents. I had spent $17,000. Trial day. Margaret leaned over. The next few hours decide everything. Michaels began. This is simple. 2 spouses agreeing to legally transfer property. Authentic signatures, proper notarization. Post-dispute regret isn't fraud. Financial struggles aren't fraud. Planning isn't fraud. He sat, overly confident. Margaret rose, held up Frank's sworn statement. Improper notarization. Starbucks location. $250 in cash. A fabricated excuse about his wife's mobility. And prior to the deed, the defendant contacted 3 realtors for estimates. This wasn't estate planning. This was theft in progress. Judge Morrison leaned forward. Why pay well above standard fees and fabricate a medical excuse? Michaels deflected. To expedite paperwork, Your Honor. Her voice cooled. And the statement about her mobility? We're still verifying that. Michaels was forced to call Thomas to the stand. On direct, he said. I explained it was a gift. She understood. She wanted to give it to me out of love. Margaret dissected him. Did you tell the notary your wife couldn't travel? I said she didn't want to go that day. Does she have mobility issues? Yes or no? No. Did you pay $250 in cash for notarization? I wanted quality service. Did you mention this was a medical form during the signing? He hesitated. I might have said something about medical planning. Yes or no? It was part of a bigger discussion. You're not answering the question, Mr. Evans. I watched for the signs. Nose touching when dodging, eyes darting to Michaels when cornered, voice pitching up when defensive. He was lying. Badly. The court recessed. Margaret's phone buzzed. She stepped up to the bench, whispered with Morrison and Michaels, then returned. Police just executed a search warrant on a storage unit under Susan's name. Retrieved the watch, camera, silver set, all matching your serial numbers. Relief and rage hit me at once. Morrison returned. The retrieval of stolen items gives this civil case criminal weight. Court refers theft-related materials to the district attorney. As for the deed cancellation, court grants temporary nullification due to high probability of fraud. Issues interim possession to Mrs. Evans. Defendant is barred from unlawful access to the property. Notary will be subpoenaed to testify. Full trial scheduled within 45 days. Thomas turned pale. Susan leaned in and whispered frantically. Michaels packed his files, not meeting anyone's eyes. He had nothing left to say. I drove home in the late afternoon sunlight. The house was still the same. Wooden porch, white framed windows, the rose trellis not yet in bloom. But the feeling was different. Now it was truly mine. Legal, official, permanent. I pulled up in front of the yard and sat still for a moment. When the engine cut off, silence settled in. I stepped up the porch steps and took out the new key, the one Thomas would never be able to use. As it turned in the lock, I felt something lift from my chest. I opened the door and walked in. The smell of wood, wax, and the familiar air rushed toward me, the smell of home, not the scent of victory, but the scent of peace. Through the window, I saw Daniel's porch light glowing. I went over and knocked. He opened the door, took one look at my face, and knew. "You won?" I won. We sat on his porch, drinking wine from the bottle he'd been saving for special occasions. We talked about gardens, neighbors, the new houses at the end of the street. Ordinary things, simple things. And after months of living in tension, that ordinariness suddenly felt extraordinary. 2 days later, I went to the evidence storage unit on a quiet morning. The staff member wore gloves as he brought out 3 sealed bags, each item labeled, each one a piece of memory. The Omega watch, the Leica camera in its worn leather case, carrying the faint scent of time. The heirloom silver set, now coated in a pale gray patina like the dust of old memories, and other valuable possessions. I spent the entire evening sitting down, wiping each item gently with a soft cloth. Every glimmer that returned was like a shard of my life restored. Dinners, laughter, moments I thought had been stolen. As I polished the silver, I felt my spirit brighten too, slowly, patiently. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was Margaret. Her voice was raspy, but relieved. Judge Morrison has made her final ruling. Thomas and Susan are jointly liable for $15,000 in court costs and emotional damages. They don't have the money, but the ruling stands, a permanent mark on their record. I was silent for a moment. The prosecution recommends 2 years of probation, community service, and restitution. No jail? No, it's their first offense. But it'll follow them forever, I only whispered. Thank you, Margaret. On the other end, she sighed, maybe understanding. I knew I had won. Justice had come. And yet, strangely, my heart didn't feel joy. Just emptiness. Daniel, the neighbor who had been there through all the court battles, walked over, leaning on the porch rail. "How do you feel?" I looked down the long road under the dim streetlights. "Not happy. Not sad. Just like I survived." He nodded. Sometimes survival is the only win worth keeping. The next day, I met with the divorce attorney Margaret had recommended. The room smelled of fresh paper, printer ink, and bitter coffee. He read through the terms, then asked, "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." I signed, each stroke slow, decisive. In that moment, I felt a strange calm. The man who once tried to take everything from me was now left with a pile of debt. Autumn came. Maple leaves turned red along the street. I gardened, planting bulbs for the next season. Daniel helped me turn the soil, stake the rows, and then we sat on the porch, drinking tea and watching the sky. The phone rang from inside, a number I didn't know, but I knew exactly who it was. I let it ring. I didn't want to hear anything except the wind. Life now was simple and precious. No lawyers, no courtrooms, no betrayal. Just living, in the truest sense of the word. As dusk fell, I stood by the gate, looking at the house, its pale blue paint, the fresh white trim, the wooden porch I built myself, and the garden Daniel and I tended together. Every shovel of soil, every blooming flower was a piece of life rebuilt. This is my house, my life, my rules. Was it worth it? Absolutely. Because some things can't be priced. Some things can only be protected with everything you have left. And some victories, no matter how painful, no matter the loss, are still worth living for. And this time, maybe, it's the beginning of something new for Daniel and me. If you've ever had to reclaim something that was yours, be it a home, a dream, or your dignity, tell your story in the comments. I want to hear your journey. And if you believe that peace is its own kind of justice, hit subscribe so you don't miss the stories of those who stood back up, reclaimed their voice, and started again. After the animal rescue mission from the California wildfire, I flew home earlier than planned, without telling my husband, to cook an anniversary dinner for our 8th wedding year. I tiptoed step by step toward the living room window, only to suddenly hear my husband's best friend's young child call him Daddy, while the child's mother kissed my husband and said, "Michael, you really are a wonderful father." That scene left me frozen in place. They were celebrating the birthday of a child unrelated to me, in the very house I paid for. I quietly recorded a video and left. The next morning, my husband came to my workplace and yelled, "What horrible things you did last night." My name is Michelle, 35 years old, a veterinarian and owner of Harbor Light Animal Clinic in Cambridge, Boston. After nearly 3 consecutive weeks in California, helping rescue animals injured in the wildfires, the mission ended 3 days earlier than expected, and I decided to fly home that very afternoon. I booked a noon flight from San Francisco to Boston, set to arrive early in the evening. I wanted to be home before Michael could find out, to prepare dinner for our 8th wedding anniversary. I paid extra to upgrade to business class, just to come home a bit sooner, just to see his smile when I stepped through the door with a small gift in hand. Throughout the flight, I thought of him, of his favorite dinner, the red stew I learned to cook just for him, of the burgundy bottle we'd been saving for a special occasion. I pictured him opening the door, surprised, then smiling. In my suitcase was a special gift, a silver necklace engraved with a wolf's paw, symbolizing loyalty, which I picked out after a successful surgery on an injured old dog in California. I believed it would be the perfect gift for a perfect anniversary. But life is rarely as perfect as we imagine. When the Uber dropped me off in front of our quiet neighborhood in Cambridge, I saw a silver sedan parked outside the house. That car, disturbingly familiar. I looked through the window and felt my chest tighten. It was Tiffany's Honda, Michael's close colleague and friend, a 3rd-grade teacher at the nearby elementary school. I remembered clearly, just yesterday morning, Tiffany had posted on Instagram that she'd be attending a 3-day teacher conference in Worcester. So why was she here, while I hadn't even returned home yet? A cold intuition made me ask the driver to drop me off at the end of the street. I quietly walked to the house, carrying the small gift box. The closer I got, the clearer the voices and laughter from inside became. Warm, intimate, familiar, but not meant for me. Through the slightly open door, I saw Michael blowing out candles with a little girl. The child called him Daddy, in a voice so innocent and bright, and he smiled, lifted her into his arms, kissed her hair, and said in that sweet voice I once believed was meant only for me, "Daddy's here, sweetheart." I stood frozen. The air around me felt frozen too. The gift box nearly slipped from my hand. I caught it with the other. I saw Tiffany, in a light blue floral dress, standing next to him, her gaze tender and intimate in a way that needed no explanation. On the table was a birthday cake with the words, "Happy Birthday, Lisa." And Lisa was Tiffany's 3-year-old daughter, the one I'd once noted had the same blue eyes as my husband. I used to think they were just close friends, that Michael was only helping Tiffany because she was a single mom. But now, hearing Daddy again, I understood everything. That child was calling my husband her father. I stepped back, then again, trying not to let anyone hear my broken breathing. I turned and hurried to the gate, heart pounding like it would explode. I don't remember calling the Uber, only that I sat inside it, headed to my clinic, moving on instinct. When I arrived, I sat in silence in the empty room. The white light reflected on the walls. The sterilizer machine hummed steadily, like the heartbeat of someone barely alive. I opened my phone, went on Facebook, scrolled through Tiffany's posts. There were photos of Lisa learning to talk. Tiffany wrote, "She just said, 'Mama!'" "She's so adorable beneath it," Michael had commented. "She's adorable like her mom." I had once scrolled past it without a hint of doubt, Now, all the pieces fit. Looking back at the timeline, I realized Lisa was born 4 years ago. The same time Michael often came home late, sometimes 1 or 2 in the morning, sometimes not at all, texting, "Tiffany's not okay. She just broke up. I'm afraid she might do something reckless." I used to think he was kind, compassionate. I was touched by my husband's empathy. But perhaps, back then, kindness had already become betrayal. I once believed our marriage was built on honesty, but now I see Michael had betrayed me with the woman he called his best friend. I don't hate Tiffany the way I hate him. To me, she's just a lonely woman who went too far. But Michael, the man I once called my soulmate, he's the one who stabbed me with the very trust I gave him. I opened the notebook on my desk. The first page still had a list of vaccines for cats. I turned to a new page, picked up my pen, and wrote the first line. If loyalty had a shape, then today it shattered. I looked up, out the window where the early winter rain had started to fall. In that moment, I knew I would not let this pain pass like a memory. I would strike back, and I would reclaim justice for myself. Out there, Boston's lights were flickering on, but inside me, nothing was clear. I knew I had just witnessed something unforgivable, but I couldn't let him know I knew. I needed the truth, needed evidence, not just emotions. I picked up my phone, opened the chat with Michael, and tried to sound as normal as possible. The rescue ended earlier than expected, but I might have to stay a few more days to wrap things up. If I finish early, I'll catch the red-eye flight home, message sent. My heart thudded. Just 15 seconds later, he replied, "That's great news. I miss you so much. Once you've rested, let's do a belated anniversary dinner." I looked at the screen, a bitter smile creeping onto my face. He was still playing the perfect husband, as if last night he hadn't laughed with another child in this very house. The next morning, I returned home in silence. Michael had already left. On the kitchen counter were 2 mugs, his usual coffee, and another with a faint lipstick mark. I looked around. Nothing was messy. Everything was too perfect, too clean, like my life had been erased from it. I opened the drawer where he usually kept his wallet and car keys. A small piece of paper stuck out. I pulled it free. A folded receipt. Teddy's Toy Emporium, white wool stuffed teddy bear, $127, September 12th. September 12th. He had told me he was in New York meeting investors. I remember he video called me, smiling, saying, "I miss you." My hand shook. There was no more doubt. I sat down, opened my laptop. The screen cast a cold blue light on my face. I created a new document, typed 3 words in all caps, "Justice Plan." I snapped a photo of the receipt, saved it into the first folder, named Day of Betrayal 1. Then I opened my notes and listed every detail. Tiffany's license plate, Michael's work hours, the late-night meetings he claimed were urgent. One by one, the puzzle pieces began falling into place. At 10:55 a.m., a loyal client came in with her elderly cat, Mrs. Whitmore, a retired lawyer I deeply respect. As I administered the shot, she looked at me and said softly but firmly, "My dear, your eyes say more than you realize. Something's wrong, isn't it?" I smiled, trying to cover it up. "No, just a bit tired." She nodded slowly and said, "Women only say tired when they're holding it all in. If you suspect someone, don't confront them without proof. Justice always sides with the patient." I stuck to the plan, not letting him know I was in Boston. At 3 p.m., just after finishing a minor surgery at the clinic, I texted Michael, keeping the tone of a wife still far away. I'm wrapping up paperwork here in California. Might be a late one. How have things been at home? He called back immediately. His voice was warm and familiar, so much so that if I hadn't known better, I might have believed him again. Everything's fine. Don't worry about a thing. I've just been busy with work stuff. Oh, and I stopped by Tiffany's last night. She's not doing great again. I gripped the phone tightly. Last night was the night I stood outside the door, hearing a child call him Daddy. 1,000 questions burned in my throat, but I swallowed them down, letting out only a measured touch. You and Tiffany. Is there something going on that makes you go over there so often? He paused for a beat, then let out a perfectly crafted sigh, laced with wounded sincerity. Are you doubting me, Michelle? You know Tiffany once had suicidal thoughts after her breakup. I just don't want her doing anything drastic. I thought you understood my heart. I let the silence linger, listening to the low hum of the air conditioner through the line like it was reminding me to stay calm. Then I spoke, slow and dry. I'm not doubting. I'm just asking. If you're truly just helping, then that's good. Thank you for trusting me, he said softly. Come home. We'll talk things through. I love you. The call ended. I stared at the dark screen, my chest tight and hollow. Was I angry? Yes. But more terrifying was that I no longer wanted to argue. Not yet. Not without proof. That night, alone in the clinic office, I opened our joint bank app and reviewed recent transactions. The words appeared like a black ink stain. Transfer, $2,000. Recipient, Tiffany M. Note: Take care, birthday. 2041. I leaned back in my chair, hearing my heartbeat in every harsh thud. 8:41 p.m. Right after that call with me, he sent her money, with a note that read, Take care. I screenshot the transfer and saved it to the Justice Plan folder. Transfer 2000 Tiffany 2041 PNG. I reopened the photo of Tiffany's silver car outside the house and added it to the evidence log. The pieces were falling into place. I searched my contacts for Mildred Harper, divorce attorney, a former client who once brought in her beagle for vaccines. I typed a quick email, attaching the teddy bear receipt and the screenshot. Dear Mildred, this is Michelle from Harbor Light Animal Clinic. I urgently need legal consultation regarding marriage and finances, possible infidelity, transfers from joint accounts to a third party, and procedures for requesting DNA testing. Attached are 2 initial pieces of evidence. I want to proceed lawfully and quietly until I have a complete file. Thank you, the send button turned gray. I rested my forehead against the back of my hand. Outside the clinic window, Boston glowed like a chessboard, each lit square a story no one else knows. On the desk, the Justice Plan notebook lay open. I added a new line. Day of Betrayal. 2. The first lie has been recorded. The distance between pity and complicity is just one excuse. I turned off the lights. In the dark, I heard something faint, the sound of trust falling to the bottom of my heart, and I knew, from this moment on, every road would lead to the truth. I barely slept that night. I lay curled on the small sofa in my clinic office, listening to the rain tapping on the roof and the wind slipping through the window frame. At first light, I brewed a strong black coffee, opened my laptop, and began combing through our joint account. Michael still believed I was in California. He had no idea I was less than 10 kilometers away, here in Cambridge, working on a plan taking shape. In the transaction history, a long list of unusual expenses appeared, like puzzle pieces I'd never seen before. Maple Leaf Elementary tuition, $3,800. Kids Planet Toy Store, $215. Happy Moments Birthday Photo Studio, $640. All notes repeated one name: Lisa. I opened my notebook and began building a timeline. Left column for transaction dates, right column for the excuses Michael had given. Business trips. September 12th. White teddy bear. Meeting investor in New York. November 4th. Maple leaf tuition. Trip to Dallas. December 21st. Birthday photo shoot. Year-end meeting in Chicago. Each line matched chillingly. For 4 years, every night I stayed up saving the lives of helpless creatures. He was raising another family. With the money I earned. Near noon, my phone buzzed. A reply from Mildred Harper, the lawyer I had emailed the night before. "Michelle, I've reviewed your materials. This is a clear case of infidelity and financial abuse. Do not confront him yet. Keep gathering evidence, statements, transfers, invoices, every expense. I recommend preparing a divorce petition and a DNA test request. Stay calm, keep him unaware. Justice takes time, but we will get it." I read the email 3 times, then typed back. "Understood. I'll gather more over the next few days. He won't suspect a thing until it's too late." 30 minutes later, I sent Michael a short message, setting the next piece in motion. "I'm back in Boston. Tired, but okay. I think I'll stay home for a few days before returning to work." Within 5 minutes, he replied, "So happy to hear that. I'll come home early tonight. I want to make things right, Michelle." I looked at the screen. A faint smile crossed my face. He still thought I'd just arrived. He had no idea I'd seen everything. That evening, Michael came home earlier than usual. He brought tulips, the flowers I used to love, but now only felt like a chokehold. He smiled, wrapped his arms around me from behind. His cologne hadn't changed, familiar enough to make my chest ache. "I'm sorry I haven't been more attentive," he whispered. "You've been so tired. What if we took a weekend in Maine?" I turned to him, smiling lightly, voice calm as air. "Sounds nice. I could use a break, too." He took my hand, looked deep into my eyes, and I saw a man who could act down to the last detail. I only nodded. I had to pretend. Mildred's advice echoed. Don't confront him without enough evidence. While he showered, I opened my phone, captured the latest bank statement, and emailed it to Mildred. In the notes, I typed, "This month shows a new $5,200 transfer to account HM. Coincides with Maple Leaf tuition. Likely Tiffany Morgan." I saved a copy, turned off the screen. Michael stepped out of the bathroom, hair still damp, wearing that familiar half-smile, the smile that once made me love him and now left me hollow. "Thank you for believing in me," he said. "I promise everything will be okay." I only nodded. That night, while he slept, I lay still, phone glowing under the covers, and wrote one more line in the justice plan. He says he loves me with words. But he pays for another love. And money doesn't lie. Outside the window, Boston's rain returned. In the soft yellow glow of the lamp, I looked at the man lying beside me and knew that from now on, every breath he took was part of my plan. 3 days later, Michael told me to dress up for his firm's fundraiser, a high-profile event for major investors in the financial sector. He said it was a chance for us to show up as a couple again after such a busy time. And I understood instantly. He needed the mask of a happy marriage. I chose a fitted long black dress, paired with the ivory silk shawl he'd gifted me for our 3rd anniversary. Everything was curated, from outfit to smile. As we stepped into the grand lobby of the Fairmont Copley, hundreds of crystal glasses sparkled under golden chandeliers, soft jazz weaving between murmured conversations. He placed his hand on my back and whispered, You've always been the best part of my life." I smiled faintly. A good liar always sweetens the blade. The event began. Michael mingled with groups of guests, shaking hands, laughing, proudly introducing me. "This is Michelle, my biggest supporter through every step of my career." Everyone looked at us like a perfect couple. I smiled politely, listening quietly, feeling the invisible cracks beneath the polished surface. And then I saw her. Tiffany, in a pale violet dress, her hair softly curled, wearing a silver star brooch. She entered the hall like a guest of honor, name badge in hand. "Tiffany Morgan, community education consultant." I nearly laughed. Consultant? She had just been promoted in Michael's new narrative, his sponsored project. Michael saw her, and for a split second, their eyes met. Something electric passed between them, long enough for me to recognize a look he never gave me. She nodded. He gave a subtle nod back. But just minutes later, they clinked glasses and exchanged a warm smile, the kind shared by two people who've known more than wine. I held my champagne glass, stepped toward the back of the hall, and gently opened my purse. Beneath tissues and lipstick, my phone was recording. I aimed the camera in their direction, pretending to check messages while it captured every second of Michael and Tiffany's interaction, the smile of two people who knew exactly who they were deceiving. I didn't drink another drop. I just stood there, watching, reminding myself, sometimes justice doesn't come from courtrooms, but from the moments people think no one's watching. When the event ended, Michael held my hand, flashes going off around us. "Thank you for being with me tonight," he said. I answered softly, "That's what a wife's supposed to do, right?" He nodded, not realizing that sentence was double-edged. That night, after he fell asleep, I pulled out my phone, plugged it in, and replayed the 2-minute video. In the glowing light of the ballroom, Michael and Tiffany's faces were clear. Their eyes, their distance, their smiles, all spoke the truth. I clipped a short segment, emailed it to Mildred with a brief note. First piece of evidence. The screen blinked. Sent successfully. I stared at those words for a long time, then closed the laptop. Outside the window, city lights reflected on the glass, casting my shadow back at me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I was coming back, not as a wife, but as the woman rewriting her own justice. The next morning, I arrived at Mildred's office in downtown Boston. A light rain was falling, mist veiling Beacon Street like a gray curtain. I walked in, carrying the USB drive with the footage from last night's fundraiser. Mildred was waiting in her small office full of divorce files, her gaze firm yet full of empathy. I sat down, my hands still cold, but my voice steady. "I'm ready now, Mildred." "Enough is enough." She nodded, plugged the USB in, and watched the short video. The glow of the screen lit up her stern face. After a few silent seconds, she said slowly, "This is more than clear. We'll begin divorce proceedings immediately, and I want you to request a DNA test to confirm that child is Michael's. If so, he can be charged with concealing a dependent and financial misrepresentation." I listened to every word, like hearing the war drums at the start of a true battle. That same morning, Mildred helped me file the official divorce petition with the Suffolk County Court. The packet was over 10 pages long, with all evidence attached: bank statements, transfers, receipts, the video. I signed my name at the bottom, my pen shaking slightly, but the stroke resolute. That afternoon, Mildred contacted the Massachusetts Child Support Enforcement Agency, reporting suspicions of Michael hiding a child, an act subject to civil charges and severe penalties. I sat across from her, watching each fax go out, my heart pounding yet strangely relieved. Every sheet sent peeled back another layer of his mask. But Mildred knew that to win, I'd need more than paperwork, visual evidence. She referred me to Joseph Turner, a private investigator she'd worked with on high-stakes financial divorce cases. That afternoon, we met at a small cafe near the Charles River. Joseph was in his 40s, tall, quiet, eyes sharp as blades. After my brief summary, he asked only one question. "What level of evidence are you after? Suspicion or certainty?" I answered clearly, "Certainty, and legal." 2 days later, I received an email from Joseph. Subject line, "Initial observations." He wrote concisely, with attached photos and a detailed report. Michael left his office at least 3 times this week during lunch, around 12:10 to 1:45 p.m. He drove to Riverview Place Apartments in Somerville, where Tiffany Morgan resides. He parked in the garage and went up to apartment 307. He stayed about an hour and a half, then returned to work by 2 p.m., as if coming back from a client lunch. I opened each photo. Undeniable. Michael stepping out of his car, holding a paper bag from a nearby bakery, smiling as Tiffany opened the door. Pictures of them leaving the unit together, her walking him to the parking lot, brushing his shoulder before he walked away. Joseph concluded, "The visits are consistent every Tuesday and Thursday." This constitutes repeated infidelity. I stared at the images, no longer in pain, only cold and resolved. The man who said he was meeting clients had been spending lunch breaks cheating. I saved all the photos to the Justice Plan folder, carefully numbered. That night, I sent them all to Mildred, along with this note. "Mildred, here is direct evidence. He meets Tiffany twice a week during lunch. Enough for court." Her response came almost instantly. "Good. I'll prepare the supplemental file. From now on, Michelle, every step you take is protected by law. We won't fight with pain anymore, but with evidence." I looked out the window. The Boston sunset reflected off the Charles River, staining the sky red. I breathed deep and whispered to myself, "He once used time to hide his lies. I'll use every minute now to bury them." The next morning, Michael left early as usual. He kissed my cheek, said he had an important meeting. I simply nodded, silently watching him fade out the door. Once I heard his car pull away, I reached for my phone. I opened my contacts, saw his name on screen, then called. My voice was so calm, it surprised even me. "Can we meet this afternoon?" "At River Bean Cafe, near your office. I want to talk." There was a pause on his end. Then he replied, as gently as ever, "Sure. But why not wait till tonight and talk at home? You just got back. I want to cook dinner for you." I smiled, keeping my tone flat. "No need. I prefer talking outside. Too many things at home keep us from saying what we really mean." He hesitated a second, then agreed. "All right." I want us to talk seriously, too. That afternoon, I arrived 15 minutes early, choosing a window seat where sunlight streamed across my steaming cappuccino. I sat quietly, opened my bag, double-checked the evidence on my phone. When Michael walked in, wearing a white shirt and navy tie, the same smile on his face, it was as if nothing had ever happened. He kissed my forehead, a gesture that once thrilled me, now cold as glass. We sat. He talked about new projects, maybe starting his own fund. I let him speak, let him settle into his polished husband role. When he paused, I slid my phone across the table, opened a video file. On screen appeared a dim shot of our living room. Yellow lights, a birthday cake, and a child's voice rang clearly. "Daddy?" Then Michael's voice, tender and sweet to the bone. I'll always be here. Michael froze. He stared at the screen, then at me, face draining of color. Michelle, when did you film this? I didn't answer. I set down my cup, voice low and steady. That night. When you blew out candles with another woman's child. In my house. He swallowed hard, tried to steady his tone. That was Lisa. You know her. Tiffany asked me to watch her sometimes. I said that to comfort the girl. I didn't want her feeling unloved. Michelle, she doesn't deserve to be hurt. I laughed, but it came out sharp as broken glass. Doesn't deserve to be hurt? You're saying that to me? Do you know what truly doesn't deserve pain, Michael? A wife's trust. I took an envelope from my bag, unfolded documents. Teddy bear receipt dated September 12th, Maple Leaf tuition statements, transfer proof to Tiffany Morgan, and the photo from the fundraiser where he toasted with her in the hotel lobby. I laid each one on the table, voice even and cold. Here's the tuition you paid. Here's the toy you bought on the day you said you were in New York. And here, the moral man, toasting with his mistress at a company event. He couldn't speak. I saw his throat twitch, hands shaking as he stared at the evidence. Finally, he lowered his head, voice rough. I'm sorry. Michelle, I messed up. I was stupid, cowardly. I didn't know it would go this far. It's all my fault, mine alone. I looked at him, no longer the man who was once my whole world, but just someone who had lost the game he rigged. I said softly, eyes fixed on my cooling coffee. You have 24 hours to leave the house. After that, my attorney will contact you. Don't try to appeal to emotion anymore, Michael. I have proof, and I have the law. He looked up, eyes drained, not angry, just a man who'd lost everything. I stood, placed cash on the table, and said quietly, without looking back, Thank you. Because of you, I learned how to trust myself. I walked out, leaving behind a man bowed in silence. Outside, the wind stirred, coffee scent mingling with autumn leaves. I opened my phone and texted Mildred. It's done. He confessed, ready for the next step. I turned off the screen, stood to leave. But just as my hand touched the door, Michael's voice called from behind, no longer trembling or regretful, but cold and bitter. If you think you can take me down that easily, you're wrong. I'll hire the best attorney in Boston. That house, your clinic, they're marital assets. You won't keep anything. I paused a second, turned to face him. His eyes no longer held guilt, but fear of losing control. I replied softly, but loud enough. Then try me, Michael. This time, the law is on my side. I turned, pushed open the door, and stepped out. Behind me, his heavy breathing dissolved into the cold wind. Outside, Boston was foggy, the streetlights reflecting off the Charles like 1,000 mirrors, revealing a woman who had just stopped being afraid. That evening, the house was eerily quiet. After the confrontation at the cafe, Michael hadn't dared return. I sat in front of my computer with only the ticking wall clock and the soft rain brushing against the window as company. I opened the browser, the cursor blinking in the search box. Boston Women's Forum, Marriage and Family section. I logged in with an anonymous account named The Vet's Wife. With trembling fingers, I typed, not with rage, but with the stillness of someone who had seen everything. My husband is a successful man in finance. He speaks of ethics, trust, and family, all while secretly betraying me for 4 years with the woman he called his best friend. They have a child together, while I was still clinging to the belief that our marriage could be saved. I'm not looking for pity. I just want other women to know, when a man says he's meeting a client, sometimes he's just with someone else. I reread the post, then hit submit. Within minutes, hundreds of views. An hour later, over 5,000. Comments poured in. Women sharing similar stories, words of support, others outraged on my behalf. One wrote, "Is he with Brightfield Capital? I heard of a CEO who preaches ethics but lives a lie." Another chimed in, "Sounds like Michael R., always speaking at those investment seminars." If it's him, what a fraud I didn't reply. I just watched the comments scroll by, feeling both chilled and liberated. I didn't need to name him. The truth was speaking for itself. By morning, the post had spread to Twitter and Reddit. From an anonymous story, it had become a hot topic in Boston's finance circles. Memes mocking the hashtag #ThePerfectCEO flooded timelines. Quotes from Michael's talks on professional integrity were turned into jokes. By noon, I got a message from Tiffany. "Michelle, please. Stop. I'm about to be suspended. The school is investigating. Lisa is still a child. She'll be hurt. Please think of her." I read it, then locked my phone. I didn't hate Tiffany, but I owed her nothing. They chose this path. I was just shining a light where they tried to keep it dark. That same afternoon, Mildred called. Her voice was calm but pleased. "Michelle, the news is spreading faster than I thought. Brightfield's investors are demanding an internal audit. They want to know how much Michael spent on undocumented expenses. Shall I submit the bank statements?" I replied quietly, "Do it. I want it all out in the open." That night, Michael came home. His shirt wrinkled, tie loose. He threw his keys on the table, eyes frantic. "What did you do, Michelle?" "The office is a mess. Investors are threatening to pull out. Do you want me to lose everything?" I looked at him, expression steady, unshaken. "No, Michael. I didn't do anything. You did." 4 years ago, he fell silent, bit his lip, and walked out. The door clicked shut, leaving only his fading cologne in the air. I sat down, opened my anonymous post. Over 12,000 shares. No names needed. All of Boston knew. I opened the Justice Plan notebook and wrote one more line. Sometimes, to expose darkness, you just have to turn on a small light. The glow of the screen lit my face, no longer that of a betrayed wife, but of a woman who had made the liar tremble before the truth. 2 days after the post, I did nothing more. I didn't need to. Once the truth had been revealed, it found its own way forward. I only took calls from Mildred and waited to see how justice would unfold. That morning, Mildred called me from her office. Her voice was firm, tinged with quiet satisfaction. "The court has granted the DNA testing request, Michelle. Preliminary results will be in within 2 weeks. Also, the Child Support Services Agency has issued a temporary freeze on Michael's personal accounts for financial obligation verification. I've also submitted the statements you gave me. The transfers to Tiffany will definitely be investigated." I listened, filled with a strange calm. "Thank you, Mildred." At last, the law is beginning to speak. That afternoon, I stopped by Maple Leaf Elementary, where Tiffany teaches. I wasn't there to confront her, only to leave an anonymous envelope in the principal's mailbox. Inside was a printed copy of the now viral article, along with a handwritten note. "A teacher at this school may be involved in an ethical scandal that could affect the institution's reputation. No signature was needed." I just walked away, quietly, as if I had never been there. That evening, the first message arrived. An acquaintance from the parent group wrote to me, "Tiffany got called in by the principal. She's panicking, might be suspended." I read it without trembling. I wasn't seeking revenge. I simply stopped protecting a lie. The next morning, the media started picking up the story. The headline on Boston Finance Weekly read, Brightfield Capital faces ethical crisis. Senior fund manager accused of misconduct and personal scandal. Beneath it was a picture of Michael in a suit, smiling confidently at an investment conference. The comments below the article were merciless. Ethical investing, hypocritical living, the paradox of modern Wall Street. If he couldn't keep his wife's trust, how can he manage our money? That afternoon, Mildred sent me a photo of an internal memo from Brightfield Capital. The board has decided to suspend Mr. Michael R., senior portfolio manager, pending audit and internal investigation. I read the words, suspend from duty, twice, then smiled. Finally, someone is holding him accountable, I whispered. That night, Tiffany sent me another message, longer than any before. Michelle, you've won. I've lost everything. Please, I'm begging you, stop. Lisa's not at fault. I just want to raise my child in peace. I stared at the screen, not responding. There was no need to. Society, public opinion, and justice were finishing what I had started. When I closed the laptop, I reopened my Justice Plan notebook. The final line of the day, I wrote in small, steady script. When justice begins to work, I don't need to scream. I just need to stand still and let the truth speak for me. Outside, the autumn wind swept through the window frame, carrying the scent of light rain and the distant echo of car horns. Boston had never felt so peaceful, at least not to me. 3 weeks later, with the scandal still making headlines, I decided it was time to close the chapter. Not with silence, but with truth made public. I booked a table at the Grand Ivy, a restaurant by the Charles River, where we once celebrated our 3rd wedding anniversary. This dinner wasn't just a gathering of friends. It was my final trial, one where justice didn't lie in a judge's hands, but in the eyes of those who had once believed in us. I sent invitations to our closest mutual friends, and to both Michael and Tiffany. In the note, I kept it brief. This is a farewell dinner. Come if you still believe in the truth. That night, the Grand Ivy banquet hall shimmered in golden light, crystal glasses glittering under chandeliers. I arrived early, wearing a long black dress, hair neatly pinned, makeup soft but sharp. When I looked in the mirror, I no longer saw the woman who cried in the dark. I saw someone who had turned pain into power. One by one, my friends arrived. The Whitleys, Jenny and Mark, a few colleagues from the vet clinic. At last, Michael walked in, Tiffany by his side, their faces tense, trying to maintain composure. I smiled and welcomed guests as if nothing had happened. As dinner neared its end, I rose gently and lifted my glass. Thank you all for coming. Tonight, I won't say much. I just want to share one thing. The truth sometimes needs light, and tonight, I want to shine that light. The room fell silent. I signaled the tech staff. The large screen at the back lit up. The image appeared. The very video I had recorded that night in my own living room. Lisa's voice rang out, innocent and clear. Daddy? Then Michael's, warm and affectionate. I'll always be here. A few gasps. Some covered their mouths. All eyes turned to Michael. But I didn't stop there. I played the DNA results Mildred had sent just yesterday. The test confirms a 99.97% probability of biological relation between Michael R. and Lisa Morgan. The banquet hall was silent. I could hear Tiffany's sharp breaths in the corner. She broke into sobs, her hand trembling as she clutched Michael's arm. He only bowed his head, his face pale. I stepped into the center of the hall, voice steady and clear. 4 years. 4 years of lies, of promises, Of nights I believed you were working late. I don't need an explanation. I just want everyone to see. Justice doesn't always come from courtrooms. Sometimes it comes from ending silence. No one spoke for a few seconds. Then Jenny, who once attended our wedding, stood first. Michelle, I believe you. Then Mark, then the Whitleys. Then one by one, everyone stood, slowly but resolutely. There's no room for betrayal in our circle. Tiffany buried her face, tears soaking the napkin. Michael still didn't lift his head, hands clenched tightly, as if holding on to the last shred of pride. I looked at them one last time and nodded. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. From now on, I hope you two live truthfully with each other, the way I've lived truthfully with myself. I walked out, leaving behind heavy stares, whispered words, and a truth freshly unveiled under the glamorous lights. The breeze off the Charles River brushed gently past, carrying a soft chill. I stood on the steps, breathing deep. Behind me, an old chapter was collapsing. Ahead, a new one was opening. No more lies, only light and freedom. 3 days after the evening at the Grand Ivy, the storm officially broke. The news spread faster than Michelle had imagined. On financial media sites, bold headlines emerged. Brightfield Capital under internal investigation amid ethics scandal and alleged embezzlement. At the Brightfield office, the tension was palpable. David Clark, a longtime partner and head of auditing, discovered irregularities in spending. In an internal email, he wrote, "A sum of $120,000 was withdrawn from the contingency fund 3 months ago, without valid invoices. Upon review, the transaction was made by Michael R., labeled as Maple Leaf Community Project Support. But David didn't take long to connect Maple Leaf to the elementary school where Tiffany Morgan teaches. He immediately contacted Mildred, Michelle's attorney, to verify the connection. When cross-referenced with Michelle's evidence, tuition receipts, bank transfers, gifts, and aligned expenditures, everything became alarmingly clear. Michael had embezzled company funds to support his mistress and their child. Mildred forwarded the entire case file to Brightfield's Audit Division and the Massachusetts Financial Oversight Committee. Within 48 hours, Brightfield Capital released a public statement. We have terminated Mr. Michael R., Senior Portfolio Manager, for serious breaches of ethical and financial conduct. His personal accounts have been frozen pending investigation. Authorities are proceeding with prosecution. As for Tiffany Morgan, after her suspension, she was officially dismissed from Maple Leaf Elementary for seriously damaging the school's reputation. She packed her desk in silence, her face gaunt, while colleagues avoided eye contact as she walked the hallway. Meanwhile, Michelle visited her lawyer's office. She signed the divorce papers, the final page ending 8 years of marriage. The court awarded her full ownership of the Cambridge home and the Harbor Light Animal Clinic. Michael didn't contest. Perhaps he knew he no longer had the right. A few days later, the Child Support Agency issued its official ruling. Mr. Michael R. is ordered to reimburse all past expenses and provide ongoing financial support for the child Lisa Morgan. Per Massachusetts state law, Mildred informed Michelle that the case had been referred to the Bureau of Financial Investigations for embezzlement and fraud. The proposed sentence could reach up to 6 years in prison. That evening, Michelle returned home, sitting in the empty kitchen. The soft yellow light fell across the wooden table, once the setting for dinners, stories, and laughter. She opened her laptop and read the latest headline. Former Brightfield Fund Manager faces embezzlement charges. Estimated losses at $120,000. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply, No more tears, no more shaking. Only peace, the kind found by those who have weathered the storm and remained standing. Justice begins with truth, she whispered. The wind whispered through the window, carrying the chill of Boston's November air. Michelle looked outside. The sky still dark, but in the distance, streetlights shimmered on the surface of the Charles River, sparkling like a quiet promise that even the deepest darkness must one day give way to light. 5 weeks later, I sat in my new office, a small but sunlit space, where the nameplate had just gone up a few weeks ago. Phoenix Divorce Solutions. The name Phoenix was not just a symbol of rebirth. It was my story. Someone once burned by betrayal, who had learned to rise from her own ashes. Mildred, the woman who had stood by me when everything collapsed, was now my official partner. We started this firm to help women reclaim their financial rights and dignity through legal counsel, asset management, and psychological therapy. Every day, I met new faces. A middle-aged woman clutching bank statements her husband had controlled. A young mother holding her child, her eyes lost but resilient. I saw myself in them. Women who once thought justice was a luxury until they learned how to claim it. One afternoon, I was invited to speak at the Women's Financial Freedom Conference, an event bringing together hundreds of women, lawyers, entrepreneurs, and social activists. As I stood on stage, the spotlight on me, I saw eyes looking up, expectant, empathetic, trusting. I began. There was a time I believed justice meant making others pay. But then I realized true justice is when you get yourself back, when pain no longer controls you, but becomes the strength to lift others. The applause was long and warm. Mildred smiled from the front row, nodding gently, a silent blessing. 2 months later, I heard Michael had been sentenced to 6 years in prison for embezzlement and financial fraud. He was stripped of all authority in the investment world, lost his reputation, lost everything he once took pride in. As for Tiffany, after being fired from the school, she moved back in with her parents in suburban Worcester, unable to find new work. I didn't feel joy, nor sadness. It was simply a natural consequence, the result of choices they had made. As for me, I returned to the simple life I had once forgotten. On weekends, I visited the Animal Rescue Center in Cambridge, where it all began. I adopted 3 abandoned animals, an old Labrador, a limping corgi, and a black cat named Midnight. I cared for them, played with them, and sometimes smiled at the thought that by saving these small lives, I was saving myself. In the late afternoon, as the sun dipped behind flaming red trees, I sat by the window, watching people pass by. A hot cup of tea on the table, 3 animals curled up beneath my feet. I thought to myself, justice doesn't end with punishment. It ends with peace. And for me, peace had begun. On an early winter morning, the season's first snow fell gently on the glass roof of the Cambridge Rescue Center. I stopped by as usual, but today, a special soul caught my attention. A small golden-haired dog, blind, yet still lifting its head at every sound. They said it had been rescued from the wildfires in California the year before, during the same time I was there on a work trip. They hadn't named it yet, but I simply smiled and said, "Her name is Hope." As I held Hope in my arms, I felt my heart beat with a new rhythm, no longer heavy, but light as breath. She trembled in my hands, seeking warmth, and I realized I had once been just like her, lost in darkness, guided only by the feeling in my chest. I brought Hope home, settling her beside the 3 other little creatures. They curled around her, as if they understood that here, no one had anything left to fear. That afternoon, While reorganizing my office, I found a small box high on the shelf. Inside was the silver necklace I had once planned to give Michael for our 8th anniversary. I held it for a long moment, then hung it on the wall beside my desk. In the dim light, the silver glinted like a quiet reminder. Beneath it, I carved into a wooden plaque. Loyalty belongs only to honesty. That night, I opened my justice plan notebook again. The pages were filled with handwritten notes, evidence, statements, old tears, all now lying silent before me. I turned to the last page and wrote a single line, short but enough to close the journey. I didn't lose everything. I only lost an illusion. I closed the notebook and placed it on the shelf. Outside, the wind brushed past the window, carrying the sounds of ordinary life, traffic, laughter, hope softly barking in her sleep. And I knew my life had truly begun again. 3 months later, on a Sunday morning, I took Hope for a walk in the public garden. The sky was clear, the sunlight dancing on the lake. As I fastened Hope's leash near a bench, a voice softly called from behind. "Michelle?" I turned. Tiffany stood there, gaunt, her face thinner, her eyes both shy and uncertain. Beside her was Lisa, now 5, her blonde hair in loose curls. The child smiled at me, innocent, untouched by the mistakes of adults. Lisa ran forward and pointed at Hope. "You know my daddy?" I knelt down, gently smiled, and brushed her hair. "I used to know someone, but now I know peace." Tiffany stood still, tears running silently down her cheeks. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry. I lost everything, and I know you never wanted that. I just wanted to say thank you for not destroying me the way I did to you." I looked at her for a long moment, my voice soft as the breeze. "I never wanted anyone to suffer, Tiffany. I just needed peace. The rest, each of us has to face what we've sown." Tiffany nodded, took Lisa's hand, and walked away. I watched them go. No hatred, no pity, only a sadness light as dust in the sun. That afternoon, my sister Rebecca called. "You know Michael's working as a waiter now, downtown. Tiffany's tutoring privately." "Life has its ways of teaching people," I answered softly, a faint smile on my lips. "No one needs to suffer, Rebecca. I just needed peace. That's enough." I looked at Hope, curled up by my feet, and thought, maybe forgiveness isn't forgetting. Maybe it's finally laying down what's become too heavy to carry. A few months later, I was invited to speak on the popular podcast, Women Who Rise. That day's topic, Women and Rebirth After Betrayal. I sat before the microphone, warm yellow lights shining down, the host's voice calm and kind. "Michelle, if you could say just one thing to the women listening right now, what would it be?" I smiled, looking straight into the recorder. Betrayal doesn't end you. It only ends the illusion of who you trusted. The only thing that truly ends a woman is when she stops believing in herself. The room was silent for a few seconds. Then the host gently placed a hand on my shoulder and nodded. Final scene. That evening, I walked Hope along the banks of the Charles River. The sunset glowed warm orange, mirrored on the water. Hope walked slowly beside me, ears low, cautious but steady. Like me, step by step, finding direction in a new world. The breeze passed by, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and the distant chime of church bells. I looked up and smiled, not because the past was gone, but because it no longer defined me. Justice begins with truth. Peace begins when you forgive yourself. The screen faded to black, leaving only the reflection of sunset on water and the image of Michelle and Hope continuing their walk toward the light. If this story touched you, Please click like so more women can find it. And don't forget to subscribe, so together we can spread real journeys where justice isn't just a verdict, but the peace we reclaim for ourselves.